would like to particularly bring attention to the issue around some unintended effects of not funding social movements. I think I come from a school of thought where I believe that funding for social movements does a long way in mitigating certain unintended effects. And in addition to what has already been said, there is the issue of politicization, particularly for social movements here in Southern Africa and more or less in the global South. A lot of times we've seen that social movements that emerge challenging certain issues, corruption, issues to do with gender justice, human rights, etc., end up being partisan. The emergence, development, and decline of a cycle of a social movement in the global South, particularly in countries like mine, where we have despotic regimes, is very different from perhaps the experiences in the Western world. And a lot of times we see that because there is no funding, there is no support, and the social movements, when they start to face resistance and a clampdown from governments, despotic governments, they then start to look for solidarity from other groupings within the country. And most of the times they end up getting that kind of solidarity from opposition political parties. I speak on the experience of Zimbabwe. In 2016, we had a lot of movements coming up. This flag movement was one of the biggest movements that really brought in new energy on the political space, where people were now speaking on issues of how the government had become too corrupt and not accountable to the citizens. But at the end of the day, because there was very little funding for the movement and for all the other movements that were related to that time, when there was a political change in the country, a military-aided coup or transition happened in 2017. And after that, the movements couldn't sustain themselves, but all their issues had not been resolved. And what we ended up seeing is that most of the activists either joined political parties or were employed in civil society, which means that then the social movements naturally died a natural death, if you want. So with no support, that then becomes, I think, the medium-term effect or consequences of not supporting social movements, particularly in environments like Zimbabwe and other countries. We also saw the same in Zambia. At the election, there was a seeming transition where the opposition took over power, and the social movement that was rallying behind the issue of promoting and defending human rights, most of those people were either appointed ministers, senior government officials, and the movement dissipated. And this means that then we are always on the cycle means that we're always coming back to the drawing board, where we have to look for new energy, new passion, new people who are willing to do the sort of work that people in the voluntary work that people in social movements do.